was a little bit of a fright there. I tested it this afternoon to make sure it was working fine, and it did. And then I just went live just before 3 o'clock. I went to go live, and it shut down again. Keep our fingers crossed. Frederick, good to see you. Thanks for coming in from Sweden, and Rochelle from the other side of the universe in Canada. Thanks for coming. And I think the things we talk about today, Rochelle, I think it might be really good for some of the things you've got coming up. Paul Kniep, wie geht's, mein Freund, aus Leipzig? Nice to see it's sunny there. It's sunny here, but it's chilly. And Dave, good to see you, Dave Avola. Thanks for coming. Daniel, good to see you, Daniel. Thanks for coming along. So thanks, everybody, for joining in. Today, I'm going to do another little bit of a reading from my upcoming book. Alan, and Rod, cold in Sydney, cold here too. I mean, it's always a couple of degrees cooler here than it is down on the Gold Coast because we're up in the mountains. We're in the hinterland. So I think last night was about 4 degrees. The night before was 3 degrees. When I got up this morning, it was 5 degrees at 5:30. So, I can see why they changed it from global warming to climate change, because if it's warm on one side, it's cold on the other. So this, and also we've got Torbjörn from all the way from Norway. I had a look. Where's my jacket? Torbjörn. It's been so cold, Torbjörn, that I've had this on all day. My beautiful jacket from Lawrence Kog. My Kyokushin jacket from Lawrence Kog. What a beaut jacket. I reckon I could be the mighty Quinn, the Eskimo in that thing, and it wouldn't even worry me. Claudio, Sensei Claudio, and of course Mike Clark. Great to have you from WA. Harry from down the mountain. So Harry's just down the hill, and everyone else is from all over the world. It's so cool. And Daniel, got some information for you too, and it's all really good news, Daniel. So I just got a little tied up with this before I could get the information away to you. So this section I'm reading, the book that I'm reading from is called the Budo Blueprint, and of course I've got the logbook coming out. Some interesting ideas with the logbook too. The logbook should be due out any old tick of the clock. The printer got in touch. It might be a week's delay, but not too much. It's just sourcing. The supply chain is always difficult from overseas at the moment because it takes a little bit extra time to clear customs and so on. Gaza from down the mountain, thanks for coming, man. Good to see you. But anyway, the logbook's out. The Budo Karate Masayama should be out very soon after that. And then the Budo Blueprint towards the end of the year. I have 2 more after that. One is called the Instructor's Manual, which is a 1993. In 1993, I wrote an instructor's manual for the dojo instructors. And that's really helpful to if you're teaching. It's got some great ideas in it. And soon after that, I've got a great book called The Wall. Okay, it doesn't really mean much until you see it, but whenever I've had a dojo, whenever I've mentioned something or come up with an acronym or quoted some, great quote by Solsai or someone famous, I've always written it on the wall. And that wall now is just chock-a-block full of really interesting quotes and principles. And people actually come to the dojo and take a photo of the wall. So what I'm doing is Gaz has seen it. Gary McCausland, Gaz has seen the wall, and it's quite interesting, isn't it, Gaz? There's some really interesting stuff there. Well, people walk in and check out the wall, take a photo of it. Well, what I've done is I've taken a high-res photo of every little quote on it, and I've isolated each of those quotes, and I've put it at the top of a page, and I've written an explanation of what it means. And that's the book called The Wall, or the Dojo Wall. and that'll be coming out straight after the Budo Blueprint. So there's some really interesting stuff, and I think that book's going to be a real beauty. It's so fascinating, and I'm not trying to give myself credit, because probably most of what's on the wall is quotes from my instructors or quotes from other instructors that I've really liked. And one of the things that I know from experience with my book, there's people who've written books or had books written for them, and there's whole sections in the book that are just plagiarized straight out of my book. And if you want to quote the book, whenever anyone's ever got in touch and asked, or Sal, good to see you. Whenever anyone's got in touch and asked, I've always given them permission to quote the book. But some people just quote it and try to convince the world that it's their original stuff. Well, there's two ways to look at that. First of all, plagiarism is not a good thing. If you're an academic or a scientist, and you write a paper, and then it's revealed down the track that even one sentence of your paper is plagiarized without giving due credit, you may as well kiss your career goodbye. Okay, and I think that there's a good reason for that. Rochelle would be able to tell me more about that, but because Rochelle's a scientist, but I'm quite sure that in actual fact it's not looked upon very nicely in pretty well. The main two areas that I'm aware of are, first of all, in the scientific world, and then secondly in the writing world, in the publishing world. So, Us, Kets, good to see you, man. Those photos you sent were so fun. They're so great. And yes, watching you do that Carter backwards got me confused. Good on you. Yeah, it is. Like Rochelle said there, it's really is a career ender. Doesn't matter who you are, and it's happened numerous times where people, two ways to end your career that I can see in scientists is, one, falsify data, and two, plagiarize someone else, even a sentence. Okay, so this wall has quotes on it, and I've always, far as I can, I've always given the source. And today I've got a couple of quotes in the excerpt from my book, and I make sure that I give the reference to that. There's no shame in quoting someone. In fact, I think it's an honorable thing to do, because if someone says something that you think is worth quoting, why not mention it? Okay, so I'm going to have to keep jumping backwards and forwards here, because I want to make sure that I can keep an eye on the feed. What I've done since the other day was I backed up my computer. I got rid of all the caches and all the history from my web browser and all that sort of thing. And I'm sitting now closer, and I've changed one of a couple of things. And so hopefully it's going to work. So anyway, let's get going. Now, this section is called the 8-step formula. As I said, I love formulas and steps and acronyms and all these sort of things, because they really do help you remember stuff. Okay, and the first line is slow is smooth and smooth is fast, which as a footnote, I've got it's a military maxim said to originate in ancient Greece, adopted by the likes of Augustus and Titus, and became festina lente, or make haste slowly. Now, VAK, so some of you will be familiar with that. That's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning. We learn through tasting, smelling, seeing, listening, and feeling. Our consciousness is assaulted with up to 2 million bits of information every moment. Of these, our brain can only handle about 7 bits, plus or minus 2. 5 to 9 pieces of information that we are able to zero in on at any moment. So being present and paying close attention to the process you are working on requires concentration. In the dojo, that learning process primarily focuses around the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic faculties. You need to pay very close attention, watch carefully, and look for the important points that make a difference. You also need to listen carefully and connect to the advice. As Benny the Jet says, listening creates reflex. Ask questions too. When you train, especially in kumite, feel what is happening, your balance, coordination, and the effect your coordination has on your body and your partner. Another quote from Benny the Jet is, "Seeing is not believing, feeling is. Nothing is truer in the martial arts. Conscious focus through the VAK faculties lets you clearly process what needs to be done for maximal results. Use this VAK awareness to chunk down training goals and processes in ever finer detail." Please forgive me when I go, because this book's still being written, so every now and then I make changes. Gaz, the wall in the dojo is quite captivating. You can spend a good 30 minutes plus. I agree with you. And I look, really, I think it's, and the sad thing I've done is, as I've moved dojos over the years, sometimes I've failed to take photos of some of the quotes. And as a result, sometimes they've gone missing. But anyway, yeah, that's great stuff. Of course, these processes go on regardless of whether you're aware of them or not. So the focus here is on applying the steps of the formula when learning new skills. For instructors especially, understanding the learning process and recognizing which of the faculties different students learn best from is valuable. And you'll know too, if you're an instructor, sometimes you'll say something and someone will says, "I don't get it. Could you show me how it's done?" So you've just given very clear verbal description, and without saying a word, you show them what's done, and they go, "Oh, I see." And then someone else will go, "Sorry, could you repeat step 2 and 3?" And you say that you describe it verbally, and they go, "I get it now. Yeah, okay." Or someone else is maybe in the case where they go, "Look, I understood what you said. Can you do it to me so I can feel it?" Okay, so people learn visually, kinesthetically through feeling, or auditory through their ears, Yeah, we just got to make a decision one day to stop. That's true, Mike. Okay. As long as your technique is still unrefined, you'll fall back on instinct and try to power your way through. Drilling technique is all about refinement, doing away with superfluities, unnecessary motion that burns up energy for no useful reason. In Japanese, this is muda nadosa. That's a Japanese phrase which means unnecessary motion. And this was one of the 3 key points that were constantly drilled when training under Sosai. And I've mentioned these points here. First of all, bring the attention to the hara, close your waki, relax your shoulders, close your waki, and no unnecessary motion. And as an instructor, if we could drill that into our head, it's really those 3 things alone will help students get through things really, really well. As an instructor, it's very important to understand and explain. Yes, that's true. You need to be able to explain verbally, you need to be able to demonstrate visually, and you need to be able to apply it so people go, "Yeah, okay, now I feel it as well." Well, Xian, good to see you, Rudd. I'll get back to it if I remember, talking about that discussion we're having about moving right, stepping right. Yep. Yes, Chris. Everyone has a plan until they get hit. Well, that was probably one of the first quotes that I put on the wall around at the old dojo at Burley. Good on you, Chris, for remembering. Okay. Constantly refining your technique and freeing your movement from whatever is not necessary means conserving energy, so you are still there at the end, able to be in control. Be precise, relaxed. I'm just going to move this over so I can keep an eye on. Be precise, relaxed. Where are we? Keep working to that level of technical mastery. Once you have your fundamental stance and gaze right, so I referred here to, you may remember the 7 stages of kumite that we spoke about. Once you have your fundamental stance and gaze right, the next priority is defensive soundness. That lets you survive even good attacks, which in turn means you are still very much in the game. Make no mistake that sound physical conditioning is vital. Good defense is 90% conditioning. being able to take a good shot. Principles do not replace hard work, they augment it. Against a powerful and explosive fighter, being able to survive a continuously powerful attack requires tremendous conditioning. Then work to improve transitional speed through good footwork. Everything comes down to good footwork. Correct flow training ensures your transition to the next step. Correct flow training ensures you transition to the next step faster and smoother than your opponent can counter it, whilst protecting yourself against unexpected surprises. To make a technique or combination work, break it down and drill isolated sections of that flow, then reconstruct the flow. The best way is to use what I describe as the 8-step formula, and this is what this section is all about. So I have it on a board. I have it actually on a little poster. Step 1, isolate the skill. Break down the flow and isolate the skill that needs work. In kata, we call that bunkai, which means to compartmentalize and break down. Step 2, drill slow. Drill the isolated skill until it is rhythmic, smooth, and precise. Step 3, drill fast. So now you're taking that isolated movement, and it may, for example, be the first, let's say you're working on the first 5 moves of the most fundamental kata. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you isolate a skill out of that to make it work best. You take just the first movement. 1, 2, 3. You get your footwork right and you break that down. Then you drill that as slowly as you can to get the rhythm so all the body parts are in the right place at the right time. Then you drill it fast, so you again continue that same broken down movement, and you preserve the rhythm and precision as you speed it up. That's the whole key of being able to break down. Just break it down, slow it down, speed it up. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Step 4, slow flow. Now you put the skill in a combination or in the combination flow and drill it slowly and precisely. And you may find, after having drilled that over and over, that particular part of the flow is really sharp and smooth, but the others are out of sync. So then you break down that flow and you work. Now we've worked on step 1. Now we're going to work on step 2, which may be the step through step 1, maybe something as simple as that. So you may find that if it's a 5-step flow, you might have to isolate 5 different skills one at a time. But when you put it all back together, it works a dream. It's like, I visited a temple in Japan back in 1976. I went to the Horyuji temple, and you should look it up. I'll write it in here for you. Horyuji. Now, Horyuji temple is the oldest existing wooden building in the world. If I recall right, and it's been a long time, if I recall right, it was built in the 6th century or something like that. And it doesn't have a single nail in the building. The entire building, it's a 5-story, I think it's 5-story pagoda. And it's 1600 years old or 1500 years old. The point of it is, there isn't a single nail. So what happens is everything is in position, all the pieces that are just getting ready to lock in place, and then they just go, and the whole thing goes and locks in place. And you probably would never be able to deconstruct it. Even without the nails, everything is locked in perfectly. Well, that's what happens when you break down a flow and you isolate the movements one at a time. And sometimes people will they'll go and get a kata and they'll learn the whole thing. And this Frank, my instructor, I think he just used to tolerate me because when I was a little kid, I go, what's the next kata? And I'd learn, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I got that, remembered that. So I go in there, Scott, what's the next one? And he go, you got that? You go, yeah. He says, show me. So I do it. And you go, yep, no, a couple of hundred more and we'll talk about it then. Okay, so some people think that having a kata is knowing the moves, but the best thing you can ever do, particularly if you're an instructor, is set up a camera and video yourself using the scalpel. I call it, as a quote from Yogananda, the scalpel of discrimination. You watch yourself do the techniques and the kata, and then you very, very neutrally critique your own movement. And if you then still think you got it right, then put it in the hands of somebody who you know has good technique and understanding, and it can be a real eye-opener. Okay, so when you break it down, drill it slow, then drill it fast, then you put it back in the flow. So if we're talking about a 5-technique flow, you drill one technique, then the other, then the other, then you put it back in the flow. Okay, and then you put the skill in the combination flow and drill it slowly and precisely. Remember, precision and rhythm are everything. Then the fast flow, this is step 5, is the fast flow. Gradually increase the speed of the flow without losing rhythm or relaxation. And again, that comes down to that relaxation, the 3 points. Focus on your hatha. I can't tell you how much of a difference it'll make if you simply allow your concentration to focus at the hatha when you're doing kata, and it'll overcome a lot of the problems. I used to use it when I'd run. If I was going on a really long run and I started to get a little tired, I'd visualize this big, long, elastic cord, like this golden cord, and I'd imagine it stretching a kilometer in front of me, and that cord was pulling me along, and you get that energy would lead you. Okay, so you speed up the flow without losing rhythm or relaxation. And then step 6, yakusoku drilling. We know yakusoku kumite, which is a form of yakusoku drilling. Yakusoku literally means you have a promise with the other person. You have an agreement, which is called prearranged sparring often. 2-man positional training for distance and timing. Well, you have to take, and this is where a lot of schools fall down, you have to take the techniques that you train in the air, doing the basics, in kata, and then combine them with a 2-man drill so that you can adjust your distance, adjust your positional training, make the angle difference as necessary, because even though, say, formally in a kata, you might turn at an exact angle, well, the reality is you might find that as you do the block after that, you might turn there, and then you turn 180 degrees there. Well, as you turn that 180 degrees, if your distance and connection to the person is wrong, the turn becomes useless. But if your distance and turn is correct, you can break a person's arm, or you can throw them to the ground. That's why range, we talk about the 5 ranges, and range 3 is the headbutt elbow trapping range. That's where you start to move in and trap. Okay, you trap the hand, and then you come in to step 4, range 4, where you have the stand-up control of them. So step 6, yakusoku drilling, 2-man positional training for distance and timing. And step 7 is jiu kumite, or free sparring. You depending on how close you want to go towards non-compliance, well, that it's really, really important. So free sparring, and the subtitle to that step is test the skill against an increasing level of non-compliance. Okay. The difference between jiu kumite and jisen kumite. Jiu kumite is freestyle sparring with the objective of improving skill and not wanting to hurt your opponent. Jisen kumite is your objective is to hurt your opponent. Your objective is to test your skill against total non-compliance to show whether it's working or not. And if you have agreement, you pad up, you do all kinds of stuff, you have the tap, you have your conditioning, you can approximate non-compliance more and more. Now, step 8, I just call it the RRAR. This is really important, because this is what loops back to 1. Step 8 is reflect, reassess, adjust, and repeat. So you constantly seek to tweak and refine that flow that you're working on. Is this coming through all right? I haven't been checking. And if it's useful or interesting, don't forget to leave a comment, because that tells me that I'm still connected. Otherwise, I'm sitting here talking to myself for an hour, and then I realize the thing died at minute 2. Okay, so let's keep going. So I actually break down the whole. Where are we here? I break down the whole 8 steps, so that I give it in terms of what's going on here. Why won't it let me move over? Oh, here we go. Well, that's interesting. Oh, I see why. Okay. So here are the steps in detail with a suggested minimum number of reps for a single training session. This isn't the number of reps towards mastery. This is the number of reps you need to do as a minimum in each training session when you start the skill. The V, A, and K for each part of the process are mentioned, so that you can have a heightened awareness of what to focus on, especially when instructing. Oh, loud and clear. Thanks, Damien. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, good. Okay. Ooh, we might be onto something. Let's not jinx it. Okay. The step 1, isolate the skill. Be precise with the detail. It could be a technique, a part of a technique. And I literally mean you may find that the technique is turn and block, but something's going wrong. So you can spend time just work on the step alone. So you break down a technique, not just a flow, but you break down the technique. It's like when we talk about being accurate with a punch. You don't punch them in the face. You punch them on the split end of the hair that's growing out of the middle of pimple, in the middle of the nose, in the middle of the face. So if you miss the split hair, you hit the pimple. If you miss the pimple, you hit the nose. If you miss the nose, then you hit the face. The finer the detail, the clearer the process. So step 1, be precise with the detail. It could be a technique, part of a technique, a flow of techniques isolated from a kata, a key fundamental skill that is important to make a technique work. For example, a footwork pattern, or a movement requiring some coordination that is part of a particular skill. Torbjörn, repeat the last one. The last step? Yeah, sure. Okay, the last step is what I call the RRAR, which is reflect. Reflect back on not only what you're aiming to do, but the process that you're working on. Then reassess. So you have to reassess what you're doing to check whether you got it right. Then make adjustments as necessary, and then repeat the process. So this is very important to have a training partner or a video camera. So let's say you're doing it by yourself, you have no one to help you, you set up the camera, and then you go through the flow, and you have a picture in your mind what you should be doing. You review it on the camera, and you reflect. First of all, you know what you're meant to be doing. Then you look at the camera and reassess it. You go, yeah, my leg's still a little bit slow, out of sync there, and I'm not bringing my hand back properly. So you make the adjustments, all right, and then what you do is you repeat it. So the RRAR, I'll write that down. That's really RRAR, which is reflect, reassess, adjust, and repeat. And that's just the last step of the 8-step formula. Why is it important to break it down? What is it about? These are the questions you ask. Why is it important? What is it about this that makes it necessary? Watch carefully. Observe the skill you want to master in yourself and in others. Break it down and isolate the components you need to work on. Name the skill in a way that is meaningful and recognizable. This is why at one stage it's quite possible that techniques didn't even have a name. And if you're just training yourself, you don't need it. But once you start the process of working with someone, you have to name a skill. One of the reasons is it connects to the auditory learning process. And that way you recognize it. If someone says upper block, without even thinking, you know exactly what to expect from your body. Chunk down the skill into clear steps and number them. Focus on breath, arm and elbow position, relaxed posture, hip movement, and correct footwork. Step 2, drill the skill slow 6 times. Okay, so a minimum of 6 times I find is what helps you to understand the drill a little slower. Of course, if you can do 20 times, that's great, but we're limited by time all the time. Slow, smooth, controlled. Be logical. Keep moving slowly, never losing the rhythm, like moving in time with a metronome. Don't get bogged down. Feel the coordinated timing with your body. That's the kinesthetic feedback. Ensure the correct sequence with all the body parts in the right place at the right time. That's visualization. You have a visual image of the shapes of the body as they go through the process. Shape 1, shape 2, shape 3, shape 4, shape 5. Okay, so you know in your mind and you visualize the shapes. Connect the breath to the movements, and that's really important because, yes, exactly, Al, because if you don't connect the breath, quite often your breathing, which is so key and central to everything, gets discoordinated, and to the point where some people just literally forget to breathe. Follow the steps of the sequence without cutting corners. Don't cut corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 1, 2. Okay. The start point and the finish point are the same, but the process in between is everything. It's like that poem called The Dash. It's quite an interesting poem. What it is it talks about someone who goes to, I think, their father's funeral and listens to a eulogy, and they realize that, you know, my father, for example, Alfred Thomas Quinn, 1915 to 1990. Well, that dash in the middle is everything. The year that he was born and the year that he died are completely irrelevant. What matters is the quality of his life in that dash between 1915 and 1990. Well, it's the same with when you break down a process of a technique. The start point and the finish point are the least of your concerns because the situation may require you to start and finish in a different place. What is everything is the quality of the dash in the middle. Start here, finish here. But if I do that, I have no quality in the middle. So you have to be clear about that dash and don't cut corners. I'm just making a note as I go. Next, describe the footwork transitions and positions to yourself as you go through it until you're 100% clear. Speak the steps out loud as you go. Here, using a left jab as an example. Step 1, weight forward on the left, elbow down, shoulder relaxed, waki closed. There's 4 steps there, 4 points before you even throw the punch. Eyes up, hand shoots out, bang, breathe out, head stays straight. That's another thing happens with a lot of people is they, when they throw the punch, they think their head is straight, but they go like this. Okay. And then what happens is there's a big gap here, and if you get a good puncher, they'll time that. And Rudd and Bratara and I have been talking about Marvin Cook's teaching principle. I have to say it's very common in boxing once you become aware of it. You can get away with it a little bit better when you do it, Rudd, in boxing because you don't have the leg kicks to deal with. And this is why we tend to square up the stance a little bit in karate because you have to have a solid base. It's very Japanese to square the stance a little bit. They'll go long for the long punches, but if you want to kick, you square. If your punch stance is like that, you square. Your kick punch stance is like that. And as you step to the right in a Marvin Cook style, you'll step 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's really good because with the boxing, as you step to the right, it takes your shoulder to the right. And then you bring and what Marvin tends to warn against is moving the back leg too much first, because it squares you up for their left jab. In karate, it's kind of dangerous to do that because they time it. There's the leg kick, bang, right there, or the leg foot, or the leg sweep, bang, like that. So you have to be a little careful with it, and it takes a little more practice. But you watch someone like Lomachenko, he does it all the time. He is so good at it that he'll move right, step right, he'll move right, then step right, rotate, and he'll literally just tap him on the head as if to say, I'm over here now. I remember there was, anyway, talk about Lomachenko all day. But I think that's really important to talk your way through. So we're just talking through it now. Wait forward. I'm talking to myself. Wait forward. Elbows down, shoulders relaxed. Waki closed, eyes up, hand shoots out, bang. Oh, that was what I was talking about. Often people will roll the head. They'll think they're trying to go, wow, yeah, boom. Whoops, boom. They'll go like this. And the problem is if someone has a nice left foot right and overhand right, there'll always be a gap there. So what I teach the guys, which was taught to me by one of my boxing coaches named Barry Michael, who was a world champion, he said, it's like reading cheat notes. You see that? You got the cheat notes. And if you always read your cheat notes, every technique you do, you say, what are my cheat notes? And if most people have their hand like this, as soon as you turn the cheat notes, look at my elbow. The elbow has to come in. So by turning your cheat notes and keeping your head straight, now when I throw that jab, you see how the left shoulder protects the jaw. And actually when you do it, there's this snapping sound when the shoulder hits the jaw. And so that way, when they step right and come with the overhand right, especially with gloves on, of course, it glances off the top of the head more than hitting you right on the neck or the jaw. The silence between the notes, the difference between music and noise. Exactly. Man, oh man. There's that beautiful scene out of the movie called The Shawshank Redemption when he puts that opera on the loudspeaker. Boy, that's amazing when you listen to the silence between those notes. Right, yes, I've been watching Loma a lot in reference to yes, exactly, right. What he does there is amazing. I have to admit that I'm I don't know how to say, but anyway, we were doing this in our dojo back in the 80s, and I was working on this lateral step we call the split step and the lateral step back when I was fighting tournaments in the 80s, and then my students started to adopt it. And whenever I'd teach if I was responsible, say, for the South Pacific team or the Australian team, and we do do pre-tournament stuff, and we'd be working on this simple slip footwork, and it was just breathtaking. It emphasizes the sound that comes before and after. Oh boy, Claudio. Barry Michael said to Lester Ellis, I taught you everything you know, but not everything I know. Well, yep, I can tell you a story about that fight too, Kieran. Good to see you, KP, by the way. That fight was actually very interesting. That's the one he won the world title on. And indeed, I taught you everything you know, but I didn't teach you everything I know. I mean, he got in his head so much. Yeah, you can see it in Gary, yeah. And you can see it less so in Wally because he's so big, so he didn't have the same ability, but he would plant his feet in the perfect position and then just whack guys, Glenn, good to see you, Glenn. And Glenn reminds me, Patreon, everyone, if you're not in the Patreon family, you're missing out. And I really appreciate Glenn's my latest Patreon family member. Welcome to the party, Glenn. Guys, there's I keep saying it, I know, but I've had to put it off because I've got other priorities. But I've got this series of emails that I'm bringing out for you guys with links, private links to videos, as well as information and downloads for you. So, Glenn, thank you. Everybody get along to Patreon, share the love. And if you're not a subscriber here now, please make sure you hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and remember the double tap. Bang, bang. Subscribe, notification, or if you're already a subscriber, hit like and leave a message, and that makes everybody happy. Okay, so let's get back here. So I'm here. I'm talking about shooting the arm out. And remember, we're just, using one particular technique as an example. No telegraphing. Shoulder touches the cheek. I'm talking to myself as I'm doing it. No telegraphing anywhere, not even here or there, or even my back foot changing. Okay? Return the hand along the same path. Bang. No extra movement. Muda na dosa. No muda na dosa, unnecessary movement. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in, just for the sake of drilling. Rotate the right shoulder back clockwise and rotate out of the dead zone. So that's a footwork drill, which we always put on the end of the left jabs. We might go 1, 2, shoulder, rotate out of the dead zone, and then counter with the right. Rotate shoulder back clockwise and turn out of the dead zone, back to default position. We call it default. We don't call it, in my dojo, we don't call it sparring stance or fighting stance. We call it default stance because that's what I was taught by one of my boxing, well, actually Marvin Cook. I think, you can correct me, Rudd. I may have got it off him. If I didn't, I attribute it to him anyway, because I'm sure, I don't remember. But default, what I call default, every training exercise you're doing, you return to default. Okay, and that's really important. Check your distance, hands up, posture good, breathe, don't skip any steps. Speak the steps to yourself as you drill the skill. Okay, step 3. Skill drill fast. Now you do this 9 times minimum. Strong but smooth, bald brats. Okay, let me write that acronym, and I'm sure you've heard it. If you don't remember what that acronym stands for, let me know. Be exact. Keep moving no matter what, so you develop the flow. Sometimes someone will be practicing a kata and they'll get it wrong and they'll stop and go, and they'll start again. But the best thing you can do is acknowledge the error, but keep so that you fulfill the flow. Be exact, keep moving. If you have to stop, or if you lose the internal timing and rhythm, go back a step, repeat it slowly as many times as necessary, then slowly build up the speed again. Clarify the drill, and clarify and drill the steps slowly again until you get it right. Correct rhythm, correct breath. Balance and posture, correct. Perfect practice makes perfect. Smoothly at 50% speed 3 times, then smoothly at 75% speed 3 times, and then explosive speed as fast as you can 3 times. By building up like that, it's like you see some people take off at a traffic light and they want to get from 0 to 140 as quick as they can, and quite often the car will skid and go out of control. But if they were to carefully build up that speed, get to 140 very simply. Everything's still all right, I'm hoping it. So, correct rhythm, correct breath. Step 4, flow slow. You do this 6 times. Return the isolated skill to the more complex flow you took it from, or combine a number of related isolated skills into a combination. Name the flow and write it in the logbook. It could be the 5-kick combo or opening flow from Pinan 2. And that adds the visual part too, and the kinesthetic part too, when you actually write it down. Observe the overall steps in the flow and reduce the number of steps where it is practical by combining multiple steps into one. Now, that's really important, because I find it, what I've talked about, laser, okay, which is actually a scientific principle, which basically just says, and there were other people who said it before. Occam said it, there's no doubt about that, but basically the whole idea was, I think he said something, it's too far back in the book, but he basically talked about entities shouldn't be multiplied where one is sufficient, sort of thing. If it can be done adequately by means of one, there's no benefit in doing it by means of several. Okay, so if you've got a 6-step combination that you're working on, you've broken it down into 6 steps. Well, then you might, like here, for example, we're here 1. 2, that's an important step. 3, well, maybe that's not important. Maybe I can go 3 and 4 together. So now I've gone from 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. But instead we can go 1, 2, 3. So we've broken it down. We've done an Occam's razor on it. We've simplified it. Okay. I like Einstein's quote too, where he said, be simple as possible, but no simpler, or something like that. Oh, good. Thanks. 6 P's. Prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. Thanks, Marco. That's true, actually. The 6 P's. I like that. Prior preparation. Say that fast when you're drunk. Prior preparation prevents piss poor. Prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. Okay, that's good. I won't put that in my book, but I like it. Chunk down again as often as necessary for clarity and certainty of detail, then reconstruct with precision and accuracy. So it may mean that this movement here is something's wrong. So chunk it down. 1, 2, okay? You break it down as much as necessary. Repeat this process as needed until you have the skill right. Be as exact as possible. Breathe at the right times in the flow until natural, step by step. Perform the whole flow slowly and deliberately without resistance 2 times. Speak the steps and moves to yourself as you go. Repeat it smoothly with the focus on sequence with rhythm 2 more times. Get the breath coordination right. Now repeat the flow again with the emphasis on correct weight distribution. Do that slow, smooth balance 2 more times. Okay, now step 5, fast flow. You do this 6 times. Drill the skill in relaxed flows now with the emphasis on movements being fast and strong. Add increasing resistance from your partner where applicable. Use your ki at the points of power stress. Smooth, fast, no resistance twice. Smooth, fast, 40% resistance twice. Smooth, fast, 60% resistance twice. Go back a step and repeat slowly and smoothly as necessary, and gradually increase the speed again without losing form, balance, and weight distribution. Okay, step 6, Yakusoku drilling. Us, Marco. Very funny, very good. I mean, positional training. You do this 10 times or more, and this is the key. What you've done is you've deconstructed, reconstructed, working with a partner in increasingly non-compliant levels, from slow and smooth to strong and fast. Work with a partner to master the angles, reaction timing, vision, distance, weight distribution, and exit the dead zone to default position. Smooth, a move smoothly. I'm going to put my Lawrence Cook jacket on because it's getting chilly. Move smoothly, breathe. Practice creating 1 to 3 different starts. For example, as a counter to his attack, as an indirect attack off a fake, or timing it so you interrupt his initial attack setup. And drill smoothly. 60% resistance 3 times. Flow smoothly, 80% resistance 3 times. Then smoothly with 100% resistance, aiming at completing the whole flow combination as many times as you can in 30 seconds, whilst he attempts to defend. This is where real growth comes, making your combinations work under pressure and with speed. Experiment. Work from different angles, different distances, against different styles and sizes. Under time pressure, fast with light contact, solid and methodical with zero room for a counterattack, any possible way that you can imagine. Step 7, Jiu Kumite, free sparring, 50 rounds. And that puts us back in the K350, remember? 7 stages of Kumite. Each stage has 50 rounds. So that's the 350. Well, here is 50 rounds on this particular step. 2 levels. Level 1, from set attacks. So build the finish with 100% effort to apply the skill you're working on for a minute. Work, and this is good for stamina too, obviously. Work with your partner without fear of defeat, but with care to avoid injury. And this is why I talk about later in the book the A game versus the A mindset. If in this situation your partner comes in and really tries to hurt you, well, then you immediately go out of the correct mindset into the wrong mindset. You suddenly become protective rather than creative. Work with your partner without fear of defeat, but with care to avoid injury. What are possible stumbling blocks to making it work? Experiment with those too. Then level 2, start with a simple plan. Apply the new skill in real conditions, aiming to use it in kumite at least a couple of times every round. So this is really excellent. Well, let me just finish this sentence. Do this for 50 or so rounds, taking stock of your progress every 10 rounds and adjusting as focus on the process, not the outcome. Shin-gi tai. Be serious. Taking the new skill from zero to mastery means a lot of focused effort and being prepared to repeat the process as often as necessary to close up all the holes. You're looking for the holes, mind you. You know, we call that the Cohen key. You're looking for the cracks in everything. As you spar, the main aim is to create opportunities to use the new skill at least 2 to 3 times around. And that's really, really excellent. When a senior grade is sparring with a junior grade, you narrow down the range of techniques you allow yourself to do. And so if you're working on a new skill, it might be a tap down, step through, reverse punch, Jordan Mawashi, step back off the angle, right. It doesn't matter what it is, but you limit yourself to that particular range of techniques to allow training partner to do his stuff. And often egos get, this is where you got to throw the ego. If you're a black belt and you're working with a junior grade and you narrow down your range of technique, of course he's going to score on you. Of course he's going to pull things off that he wouldn't normally be able to do. But don't let that drag you back into your A game of survival. Just because he got you, just go, ooh, you're a yellow belt, you don't want to be doing that to me, you're in trouble. You know, that's not going to teach you. You want to go, oh, so that was good. Do it to Peter Collis. Gaz is trained with Pete. Al Bellamy's trained with Pete. Doesn't matter whether you're a white belt, blue belt, yellow belt, doesn't matter. If you score on 4th Dan, multiple national champion Peter Collis, he will go, oh, good one. That was so good. You really got me there. There is zero ego threading through him. It's really good. Okay. And the last step I do to improve this skill. What would I do to defeat this skill? They are great ways to zero in on the weak links. Ask those 2 questions. That's what reflection is. What can I do to improve this skill? What would I do to defeat this skill? Micro adjust according to the bald brats principle. Adjust flow, balance, angle, distance, rhythm to suit you. Repeat and grow. Core 54. So the core 54 I mentioned there is a reference to another area of the book, which I call my core 54, which I may have mentioned. In fact, I'm sure I've mentioned at some stage or another. But anyway, look, that's it for that particular chapter. It's just what I call those 8 steps. I promise that you can get really solid growth improvement in anything, whether it's a single technique or whether it's a range of techniques or whether it's a whole kata. If you can break it down that way, and I'm going to take those off because I think it reflects. So if you can break it down and in that way rebuild it into a really high level of improvement much quicker. I've got to put them back. Can you break down the ball brats again? Sure. I'll send that out to the Patreon crew as well. Bald brats. Okay. We start with brats. Brats is in so brats, the B equals balance. When you assess your any skill, these are the fundamentals that you need to be working on. I might even get rid of those spaces so it might put it on the next line. Yes, it did. R equals relaxation. So that's muda nadosa, getting rid of those unnecessary emotions. A, angles. So every technique has an optimal angle of attack. You think about the angles. T equals timing, and S equals speed. Now, I hit with power, but the problem with that is power isn't a somatic of the body. Power is a combination of things, and the best way to get power in a karate technique is with these brats. If you're balanced, you're relaxed, your angles are right, and your timing's good, bang, then you have power. Okay, and R can also be rhythm, and this is really important. In the book Five Rings, depends which translation you read. Some of them say there, Musashi is saying there is timing in everything. Others will say there is rhythm in everything. The word that they use, which I think is choshi, is in Japanese, it's both rhythm and timing. And I found it interesting to think that they had the same word for both. But then I'm starting to realize that we have two words for the same thing simply because when the Japanese hear that word, they will actually, yes, that's correct, Mike. When they talk about choshi, in Japanese, they'll watch someone, they're doing something, and they go, choshi, nah, he's looking good today. What they're really saying is his rhythm is really good. Okay, so I realized that the reason we use rhythm and timing separately, for me anyway, is one refers to the rhythm and timing of movement within yourself, and the other refers to the rhythm and timing in coordination with what's going on around you. Okay, now you get this brats down first. That's the most important part. Then we go to bald, which is your brats in relation to the timing with a partner. So get the brats down. The brats is what you do when you're training by yourself. You add the ball to the brats when you're working with someone else. So the breath, the angles, L is leverage, and D is distance. So there you go. So if you have your technique correct and you want to make it work on someone, the breathing is important. Now, I put that in because Solsai was really adamant about it. And Solsai used to win a lot of his fights simply because he timed the breath really well. And if you've ever been whacked, that really leverages everything up. Best from a friend. So that's the ball brats. Is there a point of focus at? I'm not too sure what you're referring to, but there's always a point of focus, yes. So, for example, if I'm rotating, you have the point of focus. And the point of focus, generally, just to be safe, let the point of focus be at the hara. So I'll leave it there. That's that particular chapter, the 8-step formula, I call it, out of my upcoming book. I hope that was useful. If it was, by all means, when you go back and look at it online, finally when it's up, it usually seems to take about 24 hours, then by all means leave a message, let me know. And if you've got any questions, please get in touch with me. Patreon members, you can always drop me a note, and when I get to it, I'll answer those individually and make sure that we get something out of it. Rudd, I did make a couple of notes off the top of my head. The first rule I wrote about this stepping right off the left foot or stepping right off the right foot was the rules are made to be broken. So we're always taught to move the right foot like this, but rules are made to be broken. So circling right is actually quite common and important. And the footwork, it's a counter to what is common. it's counterintuitive to what is common as well. It's easier in karate because the stance is generally squarer, but it's also more vulnerable. So I mentioned that before, yeah. So there we go. Mike, always good to see different schools of karate. Yep, indeed. Mike Clark, for those who are regulars, know that Mike is very highly graded in Okinawan Goju Ryu Karate, and he's written a number of wonderful books, Shingi Tai, Undo, Hojo Undo, and his book on redemption. I actually started writing a novel called Redemption once, Mike. I don't think I'll ever finish it. It's just, it wasn't in my priority right now. Sensei Claudia, thanks. Paul Kniev, good. Dankeschön, my friend. Thank you very much. My love to Leipzig. And thank you. Yeah, no worries, Rudd. I hope that addressed it sufficiently. Your last message, which I got today, I think is on point. It's just you, and like you said, like Masayama used to say, people are asking questions. And I know from my experience when I was in a class with Solsai and he'd say any questions, and you'd go to ask, and even as you're about to ask the question, the answer comes to you because you think deeply about it. And like Rudd said, I think when you wrote that message at Patreon to talk about this stepping right, you even said, even as I write this, it's organizing my thoughts, and the solution is starting to come. So yeah, that's what happens. Mike Clark, your book's a cure for insomnia. It's also I have one in the Throne Library, and you know where that is, and it's a great go-to book. And I think we have Shingi Tai sitting next to the front door in case anybody ever tries to burst in when I'm not around. My wife's just going to pick it up and crown them with it. Okay, guys, it's so good to see you all. Daniel Langworthy, I'll be in touch with you very soon. Look, I really appreciate it. I'm really glad that we got through this session without too much of a hiccup. It seemed to run fairly smoothly. So I think yeah, I'm acting as your mirror. You must be an ugly old bloke. That's all I can say. Good on you, Rudd. That's great. I love getting your messages, and I'm glad if there's nothing more than I'm just encouraging you to write and think about things yourself, so you're coming up with the solutions yourself. Everybody, thank you, everybody. Rochelle, I did reply to your message. I usually try to keep replies as short as I can because it takes too long, and I have a feeling that the person receiving it doesn't want to receive it. I know if I get an email and it's that long, I just go zip and read it. But if I get an email and it's that long, I'll put it aside and read it later on. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a great weekend. I'll be back Monday as we go forward, and I'm in the dojo more, and I'm focusing more on the Patreon family. I might even drop these back to twice a week. For now, I'm pretty happy. But if you by all means go and check out the Patreon, have a look at it. I'm about to add another layer. That doesn't mean that the previous layers won't exist, but I'm so grateful. That's all I can say. But so many of the people at the top layer are actually going, well, no, I'm actually going to contribute even more. And so that's a really considerate thing. Clarence from South Africa, a bit late. Yeah, watch it later. Like Kenny would say, work is interfering with my karate. You want to know a really interesting story, Torbjörn? Thank you. Worked great today. Yeah, good. Thanks. Plus 20. Now you're just showing off to say that it's plus 28. No, you're just being a bully now, Torbjörn. But enjoy it. Okay. I've got to tell you a funny story. When you say work is interfering with my story, with my karate, and I'll finish here. Many years ago on the Gold Coast, we have a city called the Gold Coast in Australia, and it's a little bit like Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, that sort of thing, but in a good way. It's a tourist resort, and the beaches are the best beaches in the world bar none, and I swear to that because I've been to beaches in the Caribbean and in the Mediterranean and places, and people go, man, isn't this amazing? And I'm, even as they're saying it, I'm thinking, gee, this is a bit disappointing. This isn't even really a beach. And they go, oh, have you seen anything so beautiful? The Gold Coast beaches, I have to tell you, are stunning. They're 40 kilometers of just beautiful beaches. And I got the first job ever as a Japanese interpreter at the Gold Coast back in January 1977. I got a job with the mayor of the Gold Coast. He had just started to say to people that the future of tourism was going to go towards Japanese tourists, which everyone thought was really strange because the only tourists at that point were Australians coming up from Melbourne and Sydney, and the occasional European. So anyway, as the years went by, there was some really big Japanese companies came in, and there was one company, I think it was called EIE. It had the Gold Coast International Hotel. It had property resorts and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate all up and down the coast of Queensland. And they offered me a job as the Queensland manager to oversee a lot of their stuff. They needed someone who was bilingual. And there were a number of applicants. They all invited applicants. They invited them to put in a thing. And I got down to the final two. There was me. I think at this stage, I was already maybe late 30s. And I was very heavily involved in my dojo and teaching. And it was between me and another young lad. Maybe I was late 20s, actually. And he was like this 21, 22-year-old phenom who'd come out of university with an international business degree and so on. But anyway, they said they're really interested in me taking the job. And I said, look, I'd love the job as long as I'm out of the office every day at 5 so I can get to the dojo. And I think the Japanese, who are used to what they call zangyo. Zangyo is this, overtime at work. You don't get paid for it. You just do it. And I think they expected me to do all the, I know Cape Town's got okay beaches, but anyway. And I think their theory was the Japanese business. And I knew, that's why I said it. I knew that I'd be there entertaining people and late nights and selling my soul to the business devil. And I said, yeah, love the job. I'm sure I'll do a good job, but I have to be out of the office at 5 p.m. every day so that I can get to my dojo. And needless to say, I didn't get the job. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. Like Kenny Bogart says, you don't want work interfering with your karate. There we go. Thank you very much, everybody. Rodney, don't object. You can have all the beaches you want. Cape Town is pretty, but it's a shadow of what the best beaches on the Gold Coast are. We're having the International Camp 2023. And we're going to have it right on one of those beautiful beaches on the Gold Coast. You'll get an idea then. Well, thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you Monday. Appreciate karate is forever. That's friends, colleagues, and sweethearts come and go. Karate is forever. That's true. That's true. Thank you. Us, I appreciate it. I'm really glad we got through that. Raj Kumar, I just saw your name. No worries. Namaste. Thanks for sticking your head in. Yep, our Gold Coast is awesome. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you Monday.